Well, we're going to start the show with this very sad news that Dame Jilly Cooper died unexpectedly yesterday morning. She truly was, and I'm not just saying this, one of the loveliest women, one of the funniest, one of the brightest, one of the hardest partying, I would also say. You know, a magnificent writer, known primarily for her best-selling books, which were, of course, rather raunchy, but also for a brilliantly long career. She started off with a column, and it was on the Sunday Times, and it was incredibly candid, very, very, very funny. And it was about being married, a young married, being a terrible cook, being a terrible mess, because I think she lived in some sort of chaotic disorder. She loved drinking, she loved dogs, she loved animals. And right up to the TV series Rivals, her career just went on thriving and thriving, and renaissance after renaissance. Jilly's children, Felix and Emily, said her death had come as a complete shock after a fall. And they said, Mum was the shining light in all our lives. We are so proud of everything she achieved in her life and can't begin to imagine life without her infectious smile and laughter all around us. And Queen Camilla has paid tribute to her too. She says, very few writers get to be a legend in their own lifetime, but Jilly was one. In person, she was a wonderfully witty and compassionate friend to me and so many. And I join my husband, the King, in sending our thoughts and sympathies to all her family. And may her hereafter be filled with impossibly handsome men and devoted dogs. What a gorgeous thing for Queen Camilla to have said, isn't it? How delightful. And Cosmo, you were of the generation that loved Jilly's work, of course, and you did meet her.
I did meet her. I met her at a party. And the thing that struck me about her was how very warm she was, very accessible. I didn't really know her. I just went up and barged my way into a conversation. And one of the things I really liked about her is she took an interest in me. Most sort of famous writers want to talk about their latest book or what's going on, but she was really curious to find out about me. And she told me this wonderful story. I was complaining about the quality of parties that the Sunday Times were throwing. She was an old Sunday Times writer. Yes. She told me about this wonderful party in the 60s where everybody was dancing on the table. She was in a mini skirt and high leather boots and snogging. Everybody was snogging everybody. I thought, those were the days.
I thought you were going to say naked.
How did I miss that?
Naked for a second.
Gosh, those were the days, though, weren't they?
Those were the days. Wild, fun times.
Yes.
And she was just really lovely, lovely company.
And she said only just a very few weeks ago, she said that people these days, you know, aren't having any sex because they're all so busy jogging, didn't she? That's right. and really lamented that.
Well, the great thing about Jilly in her work is that she makes sex fun. And she always had a great sense of humour about it. She refused to take it seriously or the way we tend to overanalyze sex these days. She was of the old school, just have a bit of fun, relax. I love that about
I think
her.
that's absolutely true. And anyone who watched Rivals will see that kind of, you might say, unashamed joy in bonking. Yeah. And bonking was, I don't think she invented the word, but it pretty much sums up the kind of attitude towards sex in her books, which is, you know, it will be in a haystack. It'll be, you know, it'll be sort of, you know, behind the bikes. It'll probably be in the stables or somewhere like that. It'll be
very posh.
Raunchy fun. She was very posh.
It was posh, and her books were like, it was that transition from Judy Blume, then you went to Jilly Cooper, because I was 16, 17 years old, and she, honestly, her books were, yes, they were raunchy, but as a 17-year-old girl, I'd be sat there, and it was the hero Rupert. Her writing was phenomenal. Like, she got you hooked from that first page.
Oh, yes.
You didn't need a couple of chapters, just the first page, and you're hooked in.
Absolutely. Her plots absolutely rollicked along, and also she is responsible for giving us one of the most attractive heroes and stroke villains after Mr. Darcy.
Rupert Campbell Black.
Yes.
It was my first question.
Yes.
We used to swap these books at school all the time, like contraband.
But he's like red flag material these days. Rupert would be red flag material.
Of course he would be. But at the time, he was... It was. That's the thing. Nothing was ever too serious. It was always just delivered with fun and joy, and it was a very healthy way for us at school to explore that kind of naughtiness and that raunchiness. But I was actually really sad to hear about her passing today. It was like a little bit of my childhood had gone.
I feel the same, and also her family are obviously so terribly sad. Even though she was 88, she was funny and vital.
But
and
she
right
fell.
Up to the very last
I mean,
second.
from a fall. I mean, that's the danger when you get elderly. It's a shame.
Well, it's time now to speak to the novelist and screenwriter Daisy Goodwin. Daisy, hello. Thank you so much for joining us. And I know you've interviewed Dame Jilly, and I know, just like all of us, you know all her books inside and outside. Tell us what you thought of her as an interviewee and as a person.
Oh, she was marvellous. She made me laugh so much that I almost couldn't use the interview because every time she said something, I just burst into peals of very, very loud laughter, and so that it was impossible to cut around. But I just thought she was so charming. She was much more worried about whether we'd all had tea, and then would we like some champagne, and we all got very tipsy, very giggly, and we had the most glorious time talking about our romantic heroes. And the thing I loved about Jilly is that, yes, she did like bonking. She was very frank about sex, but the real point about her was that she understood romance. She was, the yearning of girls for wonderful men or bad men or men just to notice them. She was so good at that. And if you remember the books she wrote before the Bonkbusters, Octavia and Bella and all those ones, which she had sort of pictures of her on the front. And growing up in the 70s, I thought they were magical. And there was always this rather plain, dumpy girl who is transformed, and then suddenly she gets the man, and they're fantastic Cinderella stories, but they're very funny and they're very, very romantic. And I think the thing about Jilly is that although she was incredibly worldly and, sort of understood men and understood people's motivations, she was also a romantic, a true romantic at heart. And she believed very, very strongly in the power of true love. And no wonder, I suppose, that Queen Camilla and she had sort of long chats, because obviously they both had this belief in, the redemptive power of love, going overall. And she may not have had at times the happiest marriage, but she really believed in love. And I think that that's the reason that her books are so successful, because they are, to use a contemporary phrase, completely authentic.
I think the other book that she wrote that people may not have read but should jolly well try and find and get hold of if they want a really great laugh and also terrific insight is the book Class, because she managed, didn't she, to kind of peer in, particularly to the class that she was part of, which, what would you call it, the upper middle class, I suppose, or something
upper
like that.
Class,
yes, upper middle class, and absolutely dissected brilliantly, forensically, but with incredible humour. It's a damn good read, that book, isn't it?
No, I think she's a real satirist. I mean, she's got Trollopian qualities of satire. I think she's kind of got a sort of a Jane Austen type attitude towards romance and life. And I think she's, she writes about sex. It's not particularly sexy. They're not really sexy, her books. They're very funny. They're not, but they've got that sort of Donald McGill seaside,
I think the sex is full of gusto.
Yeah.
There's a lot of gusto.
Yes.
And as Boris Johnson would say, oomph, it's full of oomph, isn't it? A very energetic, and there's always a quivering buttock or two, that kind of thing. But as you say, it's not all that sexy, absolutely.
It's the opposite of Sally Rooney.
I think I remember she used to get a lot of criticism back in the day when I was 16, 17, that these weren't the kind of books to read, and they weren't really great, works of literature, but I think they were amazing. They got me reading.
Well, they were beautifully written. They may not be high works of great literature, but they were extremely well written. The plots rollicked along, and the characters have endured. Daisy, thank you very much indeed. So lovely of you to join us this morning. I'm going to take a call from Janet, who's on the line in London. Janet, how did you feel about Dame Jilly Cooper and her work?
Well, I've just seen it on your programme, and I feel terribly upset.
Yes.
I never met her. But from 1991, I was an avid campaigner against the Dangerous Dogs Act. And one of the first dogs that got seized was a dog called Buster.
Right.
And I'm not a PR type person at all. I just was winging everything to try. It was my neighbour's dog, and I loved him dearly. And I met Katie Boyle, who suggested getting onto the NCDL, which is now the Dogs Trust, and contact all their celebrity patrons and ask for publicity. Jilly Cooper was one of the people that responded immediately. I wrote the letters and they forwarded them on. And I came home and there was an adorable message on my answer machine telling me to ring her back. And what can I do? What can I do? She was exactly the same as she appeared when you saw her on TV.
I'm just not at all surprised to hear that. No. And also some of her books, Janet, but I don't know if you've read them, but I have, are about her dogs. Yeah. She wrote the most fantastic books about, and you don't even have to like dogs to thoroughly enjoy them. Because they're so well written, they're absolutely marvellous. And sometimes her dogs were out of control, and sometimes her dogs would get into terrible trouble. And she wrote really fabulous books about it. And Janet, of course, she was also responsible for the Animals at War Memorial, in Hyde Park Corner.
Yeah. That's right.
Yes.
Well, what she did with Buster's case was she could have gone to prison for contempt of court because of me, because she phoned the court, a Wood Green Crown Court, when the case was heard, unbeknown to me, and the judge, in full egotistical fury, said in open court, and he didn't know who she was.
Yeah.
Somebody called Jilly Cooper. She'd rung and got put through to the judge's office saying, let that dog go. And he said he was looking at having a contempt of court charge brought against her.
Wow.
And then later on, she rang me and she said, I was waiting for the police to come and I was going to tell them in front of all the TV cameras, they've got Buster in prison and now they can put me in prison too. And she meant
tremendous woman, a woman of principle. I mean, really a woman of principle.
And used her platform and her power as well.
Absolutely, Janet, what a great call. Thank you. I think you paid a wonderful tribute to her, and I really appreciate that. Thank you very much indeed. Well, somebody else who knew Dame Jilly Cooper well was Christopher Biggins, and Christopher very kindly joins us today. Hi, Christopher. She was just a phenomenal character, wasn't she?
She was amazing, and ironically, I met her at the Cartier Polo match, which was always a wonderful social event, and immediately fell in love with her because she was so open, such a fun-loving woman, and brilliant, and definitely wanted to talk about all the sexual exploits that she'd ever encountered.
One of her best-selling books, of course, Christopher, was called Polo. And it was a huge hit. There was Rivals, there was Riders, there was Tackle, which is hilarious. The title, Tackle, absolutely marvellous. And also Polo. I wonder whether she was researching it when you met her at the Polo, Christopher.
Oh, I'm sure she was researching it. She was going over to every polo player I knew and making their day. I mean, she was so clever. And the humour that she had was absolutely divine. And, if given a chance, I would have loved to have been in Rivals. I think Rivals, the TV series, is fantastic. I could have played any number of hideous people in that.
Oh, there we see some footage of it. I mean, it was a terrific show, which began, of course, with what they call a knee trembler in the Mile High Club. That was the opening shot of the whole thing.
Well, she loved a knee tremble.
Yes, exactly. She was, though, wouldn't you say, Christopher? Decades ahead of her time in many, many ways.
Oh, my goodness, she really was. I mean, and there was nothing she wouldn't talk about or put into her books. I mean, that she was really loyal to her books, and she made the reader want to read more and more and more. It was just fantastic.
And you are known to be a great host. I've experienced that, thank you very much, but also a tremendous guest. And I'm thinking that any host or hostess would have thought, oh, let's have Dame Jilly Cooper. She'll just, we know that if she's here, the evening will go with a fizz, with a bang and a wallop and a crash and loads of other things.
You're absolutely right. I mean, she was the perfect guest in every single way. She'd have you in hysterics. She was interesting. She was fascinating. She had views on everything. She was a joy.
Christopher, it's always a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on the programme. So this is a sad day, actually, Kat.
It is a sad day. And going back to what you were talking about, her being so ahead of her time, that article, that column that she started with, talking about the chaos of being a woman and family life and marriage, people like me who are doing that and trying to sort of bring humour and honesty and authenticity to parenting experience.
Yes.
We're standing on the back of people like Jilly Cooper, who did that way before people were doing that.
Also, she had a wonderful modesty. There were certain people who always gone about her great dissection of British society and how she demolishes the class system and exposes the hypocrisy, which she did. But she always just liked to present herself as just a jolly good read. Yeah. So she never had great pretensions. She was very happy with what she did.
Yes, and some of her books were called Jolly Super Cooper.
Yeah.
And Jolly Super Cooper 2 with T-double-O. I mean, she's absolutely hilarious. And as you say, very self-deprecating. Yeah. That whole kind of, I'm great and I'm a big hit and I'm a big success. Not that at all.
Not
absolutely not at all. Sue on Blue Sky says, was there a teenage girl in the mid-1970s who didn't read her books while dreaming of love and romance?
Yes, exactly.
The answer is no. Everybody read them. And if they weren't allowed, they read even more of them. As you say.
And in the 80s and 90s,
absolutely. 85 was the big one, was Riders. That was when that came out.
Huge.
And 1988, I think, was Rivals, which you can see on the telly now and then realise everything you've missed, then read the book. Jennifer on Facebook says, I remember reading her very funny column in the free magazine Miss London. I used to write for that magazine. Miss London, it was called. It was handed out at tube stations in the 70s. And I started writing for that in about 1983. Does anyone remember that? You're too young to remember that.
I don't remember that.
Do you remember that? You commute on the tube and they'd hand you the Miss London magazine.
I'm going to go.
I didn't live in London.
Yeah, oh gosh, it was great. Absolutely fun. She was wonderful and she'll be very, very sorely missed indeed. Thank you so much for all your calls on Dame Jilly Cooper, who died yesterday after a fall at the age of 88.